Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now.
From the beer guy to one of the most respected journalists in powersports, Robin Hartfield, the editor of DealerNews and a seasoned storyteller with decades of experience riding the pulse of this industry. Go behind the scenes of motorcycle media, gain insight on the trends that are shaping the future of dealerships and the aftermarket, and learn how Robin's lifelong passion for bikes continues to fuel his work.
There was also an opportunity, and I didn't pay attention to it or take advantage of it, but we could have bought a new Harley for $1 if we were on the magazine staff. We could have had access to Harley stock. We could have done anything we wanted just because we needed those lifelines. They needed positive stories and messages coming out. And I was the beer guy. So I had beer and I'm going around the world drinking beer. I don't need to buy Harley stock. There's no thought of the future.
One Gang Worldwide podcast brought to you by Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping. Since 1978, Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping has been a trusted name in transporting motorcycles safely across the country. With custom designed pallets and air ride trailers, your bike is secure and protected every step of the way. By choosing Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping, you're supporting a dedicated small business that prioritizes quality and customer satisfaction. Ship with a peace of mind, knowing your motorcycle is in expert hands. Visit keyboardmotorcycleshipping.com for more information. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
All right, One Gang, today we've got Robin Hartfield, an editor at DealerNews, joining us. We're excited to have you. This is going to be some cool behind-the-scenes stuff today, so we're looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us, Robin.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, Robin, thanks a lot for taking the time, man. I've been excited for this one for a long time. As we do all our podcasts, we kind of kick it off, going back where you grew up, what was little Robin like, what were you into before motorcycles clouded your judgment?
Well, it was early on that I got the bug. I grew up in Laguna Beach,
Nice.
literally half a mile from where On Any Sunday's opening sequence of the kids riding the bicycles were. And then I moved inland from there, but been California kid my whole life and influenced by motorcycles early on. Used to go with family friends to Costa Mesa Speedway starting in 1969. The opening round in Costa Mesa, I was there as a child with a neighbor. It was a different era. Kids could just go and who cares? It's a motorcycle race. I was in the pits at a motorcycle race having the time of my life and didn't realize that it was as dangerous or stupid as it may have been, but that pretty much set the course. And then fast forward to when On Any Sunday came out. I'm one of those kids that hid in the bathroom so I could watch a second showing at the movie theater back when we still had movie theaters and big movies like that. And have not looked back since then.
That's so funny. You know why? Scott Harden, you familiar with Scott?
I know Scott pretty well.
Yeah. And Scott said the same exact thing. He was on the podcast and he said when that movie came out, they would sneak in, they would pay a ticket for the first time and then go in. And then after they would hide out in the bathroom. So when the crowd changed over, he'd sneak back in. He said he saw that movie maybe like 3, 4, 5 times a day for like a month or two straight. So that's so funny that you said the same exact thing.
Yeah, we weren't the only ones. That was pretty impactful on an entire generation of riders.
For sure.
Do you remember some of your earliest memories of motorcycles, maybe hopping on one for the first time? And were you more of a motorcycle guy first, or were you more of a car guy with the VW scene and everything?
Cars were a means to an end. Motorcycles was always it. First time I was on a bike, again from On Any Sunday era, it was neighbor had a bike, tried to show me how to ride it, and I plowed it right into a fence. I mean, that's how it works. You learn bad habits from your buddies, and it goes downhill from there.
That's right.
I did have, I think a CT70 was the first.
Nice.
Well, I had one of those Briggs and Strattons, 2 mini bikes, and then moved up to the the CT70, and then had a Kawasaki 125 briefly, and then finally got my 6 days Penton in 70, I think it was. So that was my first real
Okay.
bike, and I still have a 6 day steel tank Penton to this day, just because that was so liberating and so impactful, and just that set my life. So I have to have that bike, and I'm probably better on that bike still than any new machine, just because that's how I ride.
That's awesome.
It's amazing how many people had started off on the CT70. I think everybody who's gone through this transformation, one way or another, has driven a CT70 throughout their lifetimes. You know, that us, the older crowd, of course, first. You have an English and German studies background. How the heck did that turn into beer writing, VW magazines, and eventually motorcycles?
Well, beer was invented in Germany with the Reinheitsgebot purity law, and same thing, Volkswagen, the people's car, came from Germany, so it was a natural. It was also the path of least resistance. When you start in high school, you have a choice of math or foreign language. I don't do numbers, so I had to do the foreign language thing. And so by the time you get into college, you've already got 2 or 3 years under your belt. You can start with upper division classes, which means that you've got enough time to take other classes to get a double major. So I actually have got enough for a major in history too, just because I did like that aspect of learning. And I knew that college was the last chance to have fun and educate myself, because after that you got to work
for the real world.
Yeah, I made the most of it. I figured I was paying for it. I might as well get my money's worth out of it, and I definitely did.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And
So with VW
I wouldn't be in this industry if it wasn't for that education, because University of Redlands is a small liberal arts school and pretty close-knit. And what they do when you're a freshman is they have an orientation month where you just take one class and figure out what you want to do. And I knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to get there. And my college professor said, well, if you want to be a magazine guy and you want to talk about that as a career, we've got 3 guys who graduated. They were all editors at various magazines, and one of them, Greg Brown, was the editor of VW and Porsche magazine at the time. I had an internship, and from the internship, I ended up with a string of jobs for various magazines that helped pay for my college education. So it started at college.
Were you following any specific magazines at that time while you were going through school, some that really interested you?
Going back into high school, I had an easy class called independent reading. And my buddy and I would sit in the back and we would pore over every issue of Dirt Bike magazine when it came out. And I still remember those days, and we would quiz each other on what was happening, what were the new bikes, all of that stuff. We were pretty well educated. Never mind that the magazine cycle was about 6 months behind the real world pre-internet. So we were the best educated guys on old news that there was.
Super cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. With VW Trends and beer mags, what lessons did you learn from those wild early editorial days that later translated and impacted or shaped your career moving forward?
You can't be creative or temperamental as a writer. You have to be a subject matter expert right away. You need to know the basics, and you need to get going. There's no excuse for holding the presses. When you're a small printing company or an independent publishing house, you don't have control of the presses. You get one run on that, and it could be another 30 to 60 days before they have a window to squeeze you in. So you don't miss a deadline.
Wow.
You don't have time for your creative muse. You just get it done right, or you fail, and failure is not an option. So I learned that I don't know anything about anything, but I do know some people who know everything about a certain subject. And so right away, when I got lucky enough to move my internship with VW and Porsche magazine to being the editor of VW Trends, I reached out to people right away who were the experts. And we had a guy who was the toy specialist for Volkswagen toys, number one expert in the world on that. And he happened to be close to our office, and he was a great guy, took me under his wing, and we ran a column every month just talking about old pre-war German toys and all the way to the modern stuff. Same thing, guys that I'd met that were in the field or previous editors like Greg Brown, who was really instrumental. He knew everything there was about the space. If I needed something from him, I had that safety net, and he could connect me with an expert or somebody at the current Volkswagen factory or anybody on the Cal bug scene that I needed to know. So that definitely jump-started the career, made it easy because there were smart people. The same thing with All About Beer magazine. So McMullen Publishing in those days, it used to be Tom McMullen's Cougar Run, actually. He had 2 Cougars, and they need a long run to exercise themselves, and he had to give the cats to a zoo because it was not good for the city of Santa Ana to have big cats loose in the neighborhood. And converted this giant pad with these long runs into rows of offices, and each one of those offices was a magazine. So at the very far end of the run was VW Trends, because it was the newest book in the field and also the least important to the company. Next to that was the All About Beer office, and then it worked its way up as a progression until you got to Hot Bike and the Hot Rod magazines and the other books, Truck, and those were the flagships. So you knew your hierarchy real well by how far away from Tom's office you were in the building, and it didn't further away than that. But my second week on the job, Tom came down to the Volkswagen end of things, and it was a long haul for him. And it's like, wow, I'm going to get fired, and I haven't even been here a full week. And he said, well, you went to college, didn't you, kid? Yes, sir, I did. That means you drink beer. Yes, sir, it does. He says, great. You're the new editor of the beer magazine, and we've got a guy up front waiting to see you. And it's like, okay. Wow. So I went up front, and it was the guy from Scottish and Newcastle United Brewing with first case of Newcastle Brown in the United States that he'd hand
Nuki Brown
on the airplane to deliver. Beer. And the editor was at the Betty Ford Clinic drying out. So I was it. And again, you don't have time temperamental. You don't even have time to do your homework. You defer to him as the expert. I did know the beer, and I did actually earn my degree in beer in college, because once a week my roommate and I would have import night, and we would take tasting notes, and we actually paid attention to what we did, and we saved a bottle from that. And at the end of 4 years of college and 2 years post-college, we had about 5,000 bottles on the wall, all individual. Wow. We had tasting notes on. So we actually did know what we were talking about a little bit. So that was the best job I ever had by far and away. I flew around the world as an expert, and everybody else might be an alcoholic. I'm a professional because I was paid to drink.
That's cool, man. That's a great story. I mean, you guys start sampling beer and just as a college goof, just messing around and having fun. And then it turns into something that you actually do on a professional level. Man, that must have been cool. So you traveled the world for all beer tasting and seeing everything?
Yeah. When Kieran Brewing was looking to set up a bottling line, it just coincided with the fact that the Molson Brewery in Canada had a bottling line and water that was the same specific gravity as the home brewery in Japan. So I went up, I watched a hockey game in John Molson's private box. I sampled every beer that Molson made and bottled and distributed. Then I saw all the Japanese beers go down their line and did it all over again. So that was like the first trip that I did for the beer magazine. It's pretty impressive.
Wow.
That's cool. That is cool. All right, so the 1990s hit, and you jump into DealerNews. I've been in the industry about 22 years, I would say. I've always been curious. Back then in the early 1990s, What was the industry like back then compared to today? Like, what were some of the things that you were seeing that have changed dramatically?
The industry, pardon the pun, is very cyclical, and we had ups and downs. About every 3 to 5 years, new units would peak and the aftermarket would drop. It was a perfect sine wave as these things went. And then, 83, when the CPSC banned three-wheelers, we lost a big chunk of business overnight. Customers that stopped coming
Really?
in, aftermarket distributors that had no product to distribute because it had been federally mandated out of existence. And that was the first
Wow.
big fall that I lived through. Of course, I got specifically into that at the worst time. We had the CPSC crash where we lost anywhere from, depends on which estimates you still believe, but the market was probably close to 1 million brand new units of three-wheelers alone at its height. And our total market was about 2 million at the time. So we literally lost half of the new unit sales in one fell swoop.
Jeez.
And
Wow.
that dynamic caused the industry to reinvent itself. 89 probably was the low point in total unit sales that we had. Going back to the 60s, when you started meeting the nicest people on a Honda, and then the Japanese got involved and we started signing dealers, and the industry grew pretty astronomically.
Right.
And we reached that peak at the same time as On Any Sunday and all of that. So the 70s and the 80s really were the glory years for the industry in terms of just excitement, new dealerships being signed up, new customers discovering motorcycling, and a positive groundswell. I also, during the early time, we launched Splash Magazine. So that whole personal watercraft industry sort of evolved overnight to replace the three-wheelers. I say sort of because they were parallel tracks, but when three-wheelers were gone, if you were a Kawasaki dealer, you stopped selling three-wheelers and you started selling jet skis. And so there was a path forward for some dealers. Of course, not everyone is located on a marina or next to an ocean, so it does make it a little hard for that to be the silver bullet that saved our industry. But it did help in isolated pockets for sure. And we went from that era to 89 was the low point. And then the 90s went on a good run, largely because of my predecessors at DealerNews, Don Imdy and Don Brown had got together and they created the Discover Today's motorcycling program and turned that over pretty much to the Motorcycle Industry Council to lead the way. And that was the predecessor to like Got Milk for the motorcycle or for the milk industry and dairy industry, or even predating Go RVing by a couple of decades. We went
Right.
a run of 13 consecutive years of double-digit growth. We didn't have that sine wave anymore. New unit sales tracked
Wow.
upward for 13 straight years. I won't say that I had anything to do with it other than I took the job at DealerNews right at the perfect time because nothing I did was going to make me look like an idiot. The industry was succeeding, so I must know what I'm doing. So it worked out really well
Right.
in that regard. Then we get to that crash, '08, same thing all over again. Bottom dropped out of the market, and we had to reinvent ourselves. And then 2020, actually pre-COVID, we were already getting a little bit of where we were before. Market shrank down to maybe 1 million new units total vehicle type, and a dominant thing with the UTVs replacing motorcycles and ATVs is the primary driver in the marketplace. And again, not every dealer, especially a city dealer, is a UTV dealer. So that surge didn't help all dealers, didn't help our industry across the board. Certainly it helped us, and it did move the needle, but it wasn't what we'd experienced for the previous 13 straight years.
What's up, One Gang? I used to think that if I spent big money on riding gear with a logo on the back, I was getting top quality. I gave leather up a shot. I wasn't sure at first, could I really get quality gear without spending a fortune? But after putting tens of thousands of miles on their jackets and vests, I had my answer. No busted zippers, no loose stitching, just solid, well-made gear that lasts. Leather Up carries trusted brands like Milwaukee Leather, Hot Leathers, and more, with gear for every rider and every budget. Plus, their customer service actually cares and picks up the phone, something rare these days. So do yourself a favor, check out leatherup.com. Whether you need jackets, vests, chaps, boots, helmets, or luggage, they've got you covered. And because you're part of the One Gang Worldwide family, use code CW20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Stop overpaying, gear up with Leather Up, and see the difference yourself.
Your expertise with the dealer stuff was it more towards the Japanese bikes, or was it all just Harley Davidson dealerships, everything else in addition to?
All dealers and all products. So personal watercraft, snowmobiles, ATVs, UTVs. If it was sold in a Powersports store, it became my job to pay attention to it.
Yeah, I'm reading Willie G's book. I'm almost finished with it, and he said that back in the 80s, where the Japanese were they were mass producing motorcycles and shipping them to the States, and Harley was obviously with the AMF when AMF purchased them, and they were having issues and problems as far as being able to compete with the mass numbers. And they were talking about, like, Harley asked Congress, or I guess the president, to put tariffs on the Kawasaki's at that time. I think they were producing like 3 million or something like that, and send them to the States to get ahead of the thing because they were selling them cheaper. So until Harley was, they came out of the AMF world and kind of got their own thing going. But it was interesting to see what the strategy of the Japanese dealers, well, the manufacturers in Japan was, and that was early to mid 80s, as far as getting into the market and really being able to give the consumers a cheaper bike to be able to ride and stuff like that. Is that some of the things that you saw also?
Saw the tail end of it, especially that end of the AMF era, because when I started in McMullen, Hot Bike being one of the flagships, I mean, there were times where Willie G and those guys were in our offices coming to meet with the editors of Hot Bike magazine because they were desperate. They needed to drive the value of the brand back up. There was also an opportunity, and I didn't pay attention to it or take advantage of it, but we could have bought a new Harley for $1 if we were on the magazine staff. We could have had access to Harley stock. We could have done anything we wanted just because we needed those lifelines. They needed positive stories and messages coming out. And I was the beer guy. So I had beer, and I'm going around the world drinking beer. I don't need to buy Harley stock. There's no thought of the future.
That's so funny. That's cool.
You were instrumental then in creating the Top 100 Dealer Awards. Where did that idea come from, and how has it impacted dealers? How has it changed the game for them?
You want the true story, or do you want the public?
The truth. We want the truth. We want the truth.
Yeah.
The truth is that Advanced Art, which owned DealerNews and the International Motorcycle Shows and the Dealer Expo, so we were a one-stop shop. We had 30% of every dollar spent in the powersports industry at one point in time, between the shows, consumer and trade. That it was It was a powerhouse. However, just like we're seeing with some recent companies, venture capital money is not always a good thing for a passion-driven project. And we were on the verge of bankruptcy, and they came in and said, we need 30% more sales. And it was October. The year's already done. And the publisher at the time, John Murphy, and I sat there, and I said, well, I don't know what I can do. We can't create 6 more months and sell out that. We're going to have to do something. And we did have a history of doing special supplements handbooks, like a helmet handbook, a tire and wheel handbook, special areas of the market that were supported by a lot of competitors, and they would fight their advertising battles in the pages of DealerNews magazine and our handbooks. Again, there's the free internet. There's no way. If you needed to get a message to the dealers, a handful of trade magazines were the only way that you could do it at that time. And so we're shooting fish in a barrel. It was awesome. And we had real strong support from the old guard of the industry, Dunlop tires and Bell helmets and all of those flagship brands. Since DealerNews had been there since the beginning, for at least all of those people's careers, if not the brand's beginnings. We had great relationships. We had their back for the Dealer Expo as well as the IMS tour. It was symbiotic. And when we needed help, we reached out to those guys, like, what could you do to sponsor this? And they said, well, you already have our advertising budget. You're going to have to come up with something new. And out of desperation, we created the Top 100 program. And it wasn't Top 100. It was Top Dealer Program. And I listened to Casey Kasem and the Top 40 countdown on the way in. It's like, yeah, I could do that. And so we had 103 entries. So instead of the top 40, it's like, well, I don't want to screw these dealers who've entered our content and done all of this stuff. And it was harder in the day because this pre-internet, you had to take photos, get the film developed, submit those photos, write up this thing, mail it snail mail or express mail to us in a courier package so it didn't get lost and we had a record of it coming in and all of that. So it was a pretty elaborate process for the dealers. And like anything, once you've got skin in the game, you're invested in it. The dealers were invested in it. We certainly were invested in it too, because I had to make 30% more. The worlds came together. We got a Top 100 yearbook produced to the printers and billed before the February Dealer Expo. That was all key things. And then we presented Top 100 for the first time at Dealer Expo, and it was perfect. And we knew that it was going to be important to the dealers. We didn't know how important, but we knew that if they took all that time and 100 of them had filled out these forms, it meant something. And it meant a lot. And for the next 20 years straight, it continued. Even after I'd left DealerNews, Top 100 was still it. And now fast forward, once again, the company, it's no longer AdvanceStar, but it's a spinoff of UBM, and it's facing bankruptcy and divestment issues again. They killed DealerNews. They killed the Dealer Expo, and they killed DealerNews. Then they killed the IMS tour because it wasn't showing 30% growth year on year, and nobody had a rabbit in the hat to save any of those things. So Bob Altoff, who was I won't say just a motorcycle dealer, he was the owner of A.D. Farrow Harley Davidson, the oldest Harley dealer in North America. And so he when he was in school, he went to Notre Dame on a full ride basketball scholarship. And in basketball, you hang your championship rafters or championship banners from the rafters. His dealership had all his Top 100 wins hanging from the rafters. Meant that much to him. He didn't want DealerNews to die. He personally bought DealerNews from this giant global economic, and said, okay, can't die. He took the current staff at the time with him, paid them for a year, and they had a lot of things to learn. It's hard to do without the umbrella of having your own printing press and having to amortize your cost over and stuff. So it didn't succeed. In June 6th, it was D-Day. We, 9 years ago now, we met at LAX, my former publisher, John Murphy, and me and Eric Anderson, who'd been a columnist with me at DealerNews from my first issue as editor, met with this Altoff guy. And at the end of 2 days in a meeting room at LAX, we said, okay, we'll give it one more shot. And I knew I could do it. But I said, it's not going to be cheap, because if you want to do like we did with Top 100 and be DealerNews and be the leader, it's going to cost a little bit more on top of what you've already spent. And so he funded that first issue sight unseen, and we had it printed and delivered at AIM Expo that first year to prove that DealerNews was back and we could conjure up the resources to produce a print. Then we quickly went back to an all digital format because we don't own our own printing press and we can't afford to kill trees and pay postmen like the old days.
Yeah, no doubt. Robin, What kind of dealers stood out to you back then? What made a great dealership in your eyes?
We were all over the board. At that time, Harley Davidson had come in with the mandatory store updates and redesign. And those stores were all awesome compared to anything else. But I really did like mom and pop stores that I grew up going to, and that was my mandate for myself with Top 100. As a motorcycle dealer, it's a thankless task. You're never going to make the cover of Time or Newsweek or Sports Illustrated, but this is your magazine. It says Dealer News on the cover. It needs to be making the dealer a hero and telling the dealer's story.
Right.
And that's what we did. And that's probably what resonated more than just the contest itself was they finally had a voice. Somebody listened to them and their peers saw them get that recognition. And it was important to them because finally they had a message that could be delivered, at least within their personal world. So we had that first year, again, there was just a couple guys that didn't make the cut, but of those guys that made the cut, there was a dirt bike shop, and it was two buddies who had less than 600 square feet, and they called it a dirt bike shop, and they were right there with these $1 million at the time Harley stores in my mind. And we created a best use of space. Those guys were our first best of use of space winners, obviously, because they made the most out of what they had versus buying a cookie cutter program that your OEMs mandated. So I appreciated that. I always liked the historical dealers, again, with Bob Altoff's store, A.D. Farrell, having the bill of sale for Harley #1, actually it was #3, that went out, the first Harley at retail, and still have that bill of sale to the dealership.
So cool.
That stuff
That's insane.
to this day. And so it was, every one of the dealers were different. They all had a great story to tell, and I had the forum to do it. And then the hardest part of the Top 100 was not the judging or rounding up the sponsorship or all that. It was just, I only have 12 out of the 100 that I can even feature in the magazine in any given year. We can feature them all one paragraph or one page in a yearbook, but that's not the same thing as getting that cover of Dealer News and getting honored for it. And so every single one, there's not one thing that I can say other than I did get a little bias because if you were a Harley store and you had to do it, I should have, but I didn't always just go that way. And when I stopped doing it, it was easy. Those stores were far superior because of the Harley PhD program and the merchandising they did. That all of those guys definitely earned it. But to be a standout Harley store, you had to do something extra. You had to be A.D. Farrell. You had to do something like that. So I put a harder criteria to the contest for them, just to give a dirt bike shop and other guys like that an opportunity to
a chance. Yeah.
And now we've talked about bringing it back. It's very hard to do, but
why?
Finding that kind of sponsorship and to do it right, it has to be a printed yearbook. I'm not going to do this digitally. I may solicit the contest digital because that's much easier for the dealers. Everybody's pressed for time, but the awards ceremony has to be the awards ceremony. I mean, my staff and we wore tuxedos at that. This was the dealer's big day. It was important. Again, because we owned the dealer expo, I had the world to my backyard. I didn't need to worry about transportation or anything. I just needed to give those guys the best Friday night before the show started that I possibly could for our Top 100 awards ceremony. I don't have that kind of use anymore, so I need to work with the National Powersports Dealer Association or the MIC or somebody out there to make this happen again.
Got it.
Sponsor-wise, that makes sense. All right, so over your decades in the industry and in media, you've witnessed a lot of shifts, booms, busts, electric vehicles, the rise of ATVs. What has been the biggest shift and maybe the most surprising shift that you've seen?
So when he ran GE, Jack Welch was famous for hiring people who could see around corners. That's one of Bob Altoff's favorite expressions. I don't have that ability, but Dealer News was in that seat where I did have pretty much the leading edge. I got the first look around the corner. So I saw all this stuff coming. And I can't think of anything that I thought that was going to be brilliant that didn't catch on. And because we'd launched Splash, I already knew the watercraft wave was coming. I had a head start on things like that. Same thing with the UTVs. That was a natural extension. And even back in the days when I was doing four-wheel drive action and the truck books and the beer magazine, I got my job at one of the magazines because nobody had ever seen a four-wheel ATV before. And they had a cover shoot. And it's like, does anybody here even know what that is? And I raised my hand and said, "Oh, I can ride it. It's got a motor. It's got wheels. I can do it." And wheeling what was the LT 230 Suzuki Quad Runner on the cover of a major magazine was pretty cool. And it put me in that group of pioneers. We knew what four-wheelers were. I didn't have the talent or the engineering background to understand it, but I had the power of a magazine cover behind me, and I got to then go to each of the OEM launches and see all of that roll out and watch that evolution firsthand from the saddle.
Very
literally,
cool.
I had, again, riding around the world and drinking beer. I also went around the world riding ATVs, and even as recently as 10 years ago, I was going to Taiwan and other places and helping engineering teams with ATVs, not because I'm that good, but I hit the demographic. Fat old guy who's going to ride it way harder than their test riders do. And then there's a couple guys that are good engineers, and we would show them. They would spend all this time building a great machine and not understand the intended usage or what the American customer is going to be. And that was kind of eye-opening. It's like, come on, guys, it's not that hard. But culturally, we are different. We are, look around the world, even to this day, we're the epicenter of the ATV market and the UTV.
That's right.
Expecting an engineer in Taiwan to understand the abuse of what we're going to do, or the temperatures at Glamis, or something like that we take for granted, that's not what they understand. So the companies that figured out how to market those niche products into the U.S. are the ones that succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. And there's 20 other manufacturers who I went in and I told them everything I could that are not here today.
Those side-by-sides blew me away, man. I didn't realize, I mean, they've taken off so dramatically. As far as we had Sam Nemi on our show. He's the owner of Broward Motorsports down here in South Florida. And he has multiple stores, I think 8 or something. And we were talking about the side-by-sides. And he's mentioning that, like, they start at 35 to 40 grand, some of them. I'm like, what? That is insane. That's crazy.
Okay, so you asked what's the biggest ship. That's literally the biggest ship. I don't understand a world where a stock machine is $40,000 of any
Me
kind.
too.
Yeah.
Me too.
More power to them if they can find those customers, but
They can sell them,
I think that anybody who wanted one and had access to easy money bought 2. I don't know that they're going to be able to show that 30% growth that the VC want. But I don't think we're that bad off. Let's reset now. According to the Department of Transportation and all of the real numbers, there are more motorcycles registered for use in the United States, street motorcycles, than there's ever in the history of our industry. We used to say that we were 8 million motorcycle industry. Now it's 10 to 12 million clean late model bikes being used every day. Does that translate into, 30% or clear out the dirt bikes that KTM needs to move in the next 30 days? Probably not. But we're not dying as an industry. We're just morphing a little bit. And we've got more potential customers than we ever had. We're burning as many tires or more, and we're burning through batteries and chains and drive belts and all of those critical components. So there is a need for a work to service those machines. and supply that and build that enthusiasm and be the local landmark that leads the riding community to them, leads our industry forward, comes down to the dealership level. No amount of OEM incentives or cutting the price back from 40,000 to 30,000 on a side-by-side is going to move the needle like your local dealer can.
Right.
Right.
And that's Harley's problem when they're losing these legacy dealers that have been around 80, 90 years, 4 and 5 generations, and suddenly that pillar of the community is gone. That's a bigger blow to our industry than anything that Harley's current management can overcome.
Well, what I'm seeing with Harley is basically you have maybe 10 major corporations or exclusive large dealers that are buying up all the smaller stores, monopolizing it. Is that what's going on with it out there? I mean, it used to be, you know, everybody kind of, you know, you had people that owned Harley dealerships in small towns, things like that. But now it seems like there's no more mom and pop type Harley dealership anymore. It seems like it's mostly owned by one or two major, you know, like a Ed Morse or, you know, somebody like that owns all these huge conglomerates. Is that what you're seeing that's going on too?
Yeah, and that was definitely a shift from Matt Levitis's time to Jochen taking over. I think that they made that push. That was part of the hardwire, rewire, whatever wire nonsense that was a corporate thought. You can't build enthusiasm from a car dealership. Cars are commodities. Motorcycles are passion driven. Yes, there's a economy of scale, and certainly John Elway Group has proven that they can take their resources from their car side and support a Powersports thing. And they did buy a Harley store too, and they're doing it that way. But they're the exception to the rule. You get a giant automotive chain. Again, the motor company likes it because, our books are covered and we're going to wholesale this many units. But it's that from the point of wholesale to actually somebody riding that and getting the Barn Shield tattooed on their body and
Right.
lifestyle. You don't go to a car dealership for that experience. It just not happen.
No. And it all goes back to what you said too, is you used to love to walk into your local dealer. You felt there was a community type of a base mentality. Now you walk into any of these larger Harley Davidson dealerships and you're truly feeling like you're buying a car instead of a motorcycle because of the pressure with the sales and now how it is. It's not so much of a home-based environment anymore. To me, it's just changed so dramatically. I don't even visit them. You know, like I used to bike night or something like that. You'd pull up, hang out, have a couple of beers, they'd have a band, all this stuff. Now you get in there and I mean, everybody's pushing for sales and whoa, it just feels like you're buying a car instead of being in a motorcycle place.
Yeah. So the bottom line is support your local dealer because you don't know how tough they've got it with that pressure and the cost of doing business hasn't gotten any better for them. But the OEM support has definitely been reduced. Yeah. It's not just Harley. That is the way of the world. Money makes the world go round, they say. And being a motorcycle dealer is a hard way to make an easy living.
Absolutely, man. It's a passion-driven business. Let's talk a little bit about your writing style. I wanted to find out, I mean, you've written so many articles for so many different things in your life. Have there been stories you dug into that caused a kind of a shakeup in the industry a little bit?
Couple times. I'm not Woodward and Bernstein. I never tried to be, but I'm too stupid to tell a lie, so I'll just tell the truth. Because it's easier to remember. I can remember the truth. I have a hard time if I make up a story back in it. And again, something that I did learn in college, one of the few things other than drinking beer, was the basics of journalism. You have to have a code of conduct. You have to have ethics. There are slander and libel laws. Unfortunately, protected speech online means you get away with saying anything you want about anybody without vetting it. And there's no such thing as getting two sources and all of the rules that I had to play by as a newspaper guy before I became a magazine guy. But the toughest job I ever had was a local newspaper. God forbid you spelled little Johnny's name wrong because the community hates you. And I'll face a lawsuit from an OEM when I've got the facts and all that, much more so than I want to face some angry housewife in the grocery store. So I learned early on, you spell the people's names right, you get the facts right, and you figure out a punchline or some clever way to tell that story. Don't cut and paste it. Don't mail it in. Actually take a look at it. And I still, even a news item, unless it's a lawsuit or it's somebody's financials, rarely will we do cut and paste. I don't believe in cut and paste. That's not journalism. That's clickbait. I have to have a hook to it. I have to have an angle. Fortunately, because I've been around long enough, I can find a point of reference. I can remember when this tied into that, something, or I will quote somebody. You can't run these anonymous stories hiding behind a fake name or no byline or any of that. If it's got my name on it, or if it's got the DealerNews name on it, it has to be right. And I have to have 2 or 3 people that I trust within the industry that will give me that quote directly, or it doesn't run. I don't need that. That's the good thing about not being public facing. I don't need more clicks. I don't need to expand my universe. I need to better serve the dealers. That's my job. DealerNews,
Awesome.
our owners at dealers. So you don't play fast and loose with the truth. You don't do something just to get clicks. That being said, sure, I'll come up with a catchy headline, or I'll do something that makes somebody look at something. That's part and parcel with it. And there's no such thing as true journalism, because everything is filtered through the lens of whoever is putting that story together. But I still do believe that there needs to be accountability. And if I do make a mistake, as in the case when Harley's lawyers took me to task in '82 for saying that the All-American motorcycle was 30% sourced overseas, that didn't go over well. And I ran the story with a photo of the tag inside a genuine motor clothes jacket saying made in Thailand. I see it. Look at the rims were coming from Australia at the time. The brakes were Japanese, Nissan, I think it was. All of these things, I added the components up, and it was way more than 30%. I said, you can say assembled in America, or at the time, the York plant was still producing all the engines. So yeah, your powertrain is American. However, your motorcycle is not the 100% American you claim to be. The PR guy gave me a heads up nicely and said, can you retract? It's like, there's nothing to retract. I can't.
Yeah.
And then the lawyers came in and said, all right, you're in trouble because our stock is dropping because of what you said. And it's like, well, I doubt that. You're going to have to make a case for that, but here's my facts. And was Don Brown, who was with MIC and with DealerNews at the time, saved me. And he stood up. MIC did back me on that play way back when. I wasn't even an MIC member at the time, but neither was Harley. So they said, you know, if you need a meeting place and we need an attorney present, their attorney or legal counsel was present with Harley's attorneys. And the story ran as I ran it. There was no retraction, but I won't grab that third rail again. Although I should, the Pan America, the American motorcycle is made in Thailand. Funny how that goes.
I know.
Just like that label on the motor clothes jacket, and now the whole motorcycle is being assembled there.
Hey guys, the show will be back in 1 minute right after a word from our sponsor.
Hey, One Gang, tired of feeling like your butt's taking more of a beating than your bike on those long rides? Introducing Butt Buffer, the ultimate solution to saddle soreness. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. These cushions are made from medical-grade viscoelastic polymer, scientifically crafted to eliminate pressure points and keep your circulation flowing. No more numb nuts or numb butts. And here's the best part. Butt Buffer cushions are made right here in the U.S. for the last 30 years. From Harleys to Hondas, we've got a cushion to fit your ride perfectly. Plus, with styles ranging from sleek pebble polymer to luxurious sheepskin, there's a Butt Buffer for every rider's style. Get your Butt Buffer today at buttbuffer.com. That's buttbuffer.com. Your butt will thank you, and you'll ride longer and happier. We've got your butt covered. I know, it's crazy. Crazy. And that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. That's so cool to know, like back in '82, what was going on when you were putting that out. for anybody other, maybe people born after that or some younger generations that may not know that story. That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Robin. I appreciate that.
Well, I don't like being that guy, but
the truth shall set you free.
it will, or it'll get me fired. And I've been fired
Yeah, well, that's true.
twice in my life for editorial
Man.
stances. And then the first time was when the
Man.
ATC or actually when the bottom dropped out, the publisher of Motorcycle Product News, where I had worked, said, "You're going to have to stop being so negative." And I said, "I'm not being negative. I'm just telling the truth. This market's in for a down spell." And so again, that was ruining the magazine and causing them to lose advertising sales. Therefore, I was fired. And
Wow.
Man.
that was a rude awakening. I went out to the desert and I rode with my buddy Paul Goldie for a week and got my head right. Came back and actually worked for Paisano, Joe Teresi, who just passed away. Took over the V-Twin Expo show dates in Cincinnati, and for 10 years, the V-Twin Expo ran. And Jim Betlock had got me in to meet with Teresi, and they did V-Twin News, a trade-only Harley publication, going to the Easy Riders crowd to support that trade show. And it was awesome.
Man. That brings me right into the next question. You've walked the show floors at Dealer Expo and AIM Expo, just to name a couple, and you've talked to thousands of dealers. What's the heartbeat of the dealer community right now?
When I first started, one of my first top 100 guys, and the only guy to win every single year, was Bob Jones, who also ran for senator in Missouri recently. But Bob was a retired school teacher who got into the industry to support his habit. And he said, there's always going to be a need within a certain population demographic for what we deliver. It could be electric hoverboards. He said this in 1991 or 2. He was already thinking that far ahead, but he said there's going to be a need for that kind of product for the adrenaline junkies and the people that it resonates with. And there's going to need to be a dealer network to repair that and sell it when he's finally wised up. And he never wised up. He kept chasing the dream as a dealership owner, and a top 100 winner for the next 30 years after that. So that was awesome, his part, but that is still there. The dealers that are succeeding now in these really tough times, even Harley dealers, there's some that are doing well because the good guys get it. That 80-20 rule has always been there. 80% of this business is run by the 20% cream of the crop. Everybody else fights for what the big guys don't have. I don't want to say big guys, but the smart operators have. And they have it because they have the passion and the business experience to pull it together. You can have a car group, they don't have the passion, so they're not going to be as successful. Or you can have a really sharp dealer, but he doesn't have the car group funding, so somewhere he's going to come up short. But there is that 20% of the dealer body still straddles enough of the line in both camps to do very well for themselves. And again, hard way to make an easy living. Those guys would be hugely successful in any other endeavor they wanted to do. The fact that they continue to do it in power sports makes me feel good. They're not going to fail. This industry is not going to go away. Those 8 million now becoming 10 to 12 million used motorcycles in use is not going to go away. Not overnight. We do need in the bottle. We need to meet the nicest people on a Honda again. We need something like that. We need to got milk or go RVing for the motorcycle thing. And the motorcycle have been trying for 10 years now with Ride With Us program. And maybe that gets some traction now that there's new leadership at MIC. So it's going to happen. I just hope it happens, or we start seeing a turnaround before more of those legacy dealerships disappear. Because for each one of those guys that drops out of the market, that just means that 20% gets a little stronger in their market. And they don't want it. They want everybody to succeed. All of them say, to a man or a woman, they need a strong competitor. They need
absolutely
in their town, or they need another dealer in their town, or they need something, because That's what fuels that passion. And
Yep.
you can be a snowmobile guy and love it, but you're an Arctic Cat guy or a Polaris guy, or now a scooter guy. And look what happened with Arctic Cat, with the VC Textron ruining a passion-driven brand. And fortunately, Argo and ex-Arctic Cat leadership just bought it back this week. So maybe the sled market, provided they have a good winter with snow and the new team can come in and save it, becomes a 3-player field again. Yamaha is out of the sled space after 50 years of being there. So it's not going to be easy, but the good guys and the passion-driven operators are going to succeed.
Gotcha. I'm going to piggyback a little bit, but something I think different from what Ben asked, because you've done some consulting too. When brands bring you in, what do they usually get wrong about connecting with riders or dealers that, in your opinion, you try to kind of steer them in the right direction? What seems to be the most common?
In the case of the OEMs and the failed ATVs and the things that I've witnessed at that level, it's because they don't believe it. If you're not immersed in this market, you just don't understand. And so for a European company or an Asian company to try and sell an ATV without truly understanding what that market is, and when I tell them, oh, this and that, look at the guys that go swamp riding. They've got 35-inch tall tires. They've got snorkels. They've got money, all of that. But they don't spend it on riding gear. They're going to be wearing cut-off Levi's and rubber boots.
Right.
And so, and no matter what you did with your stock machine, it's never going to come with these giant tractor tires and snorkels, because that's never going to pass any engineering standard. But the viable segment of the market. So when I go in and I tell somebody that, usually goes in one ear and out the other, and I'm not invited back to consult with them again.
That's crazy.
And there's individual small brands, and I did it a lot with the mag companies. I was on retainer there for 10 years. They all have great stories to tell. It's just they don't tell their own story. That's our biggest problems in the industry, is we're our own worst enemy. We don't tell the story right. The MIC does great things. They saved us during the COVID time by getting us exempt, but we didn't tell that story properly. So now the pushback is, what does MIC do for us?
Right.
It's same thing with the brands. It's a story when you say it's a story. It happens when you tell the truth and convey it effectively. And most of my consulting gigs that and I don't charge for it, or it's information. If you want to hear it, fine. I appreciate you listening. I would like to see you pay attention to build your own brand. I want you to succeed as a company. I want my dealers to succeed using your products, and I want the riders to be happier. It does not have to be opposition, but we do have to work and sync together. And the fact that we are a unique market, that's the other thing. It's North America. Okay, you just told me there's 12 million motorcycles in use, and I've got this whiz-bang gadget that's going to fit 90% of all applications. Therefore, my sales expectation for year one with an unknown brand for this unknown widget is going to be 10 million. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. But they're insistent on it. And, nobody wants to be told they got an ugly baby. So you can't go into one of those meetings and say, please rethink it, and you're going to sell 5 this year, because they will not hear that.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
So you've seen marketing go from brochures and faxes to YouTubes and TikToks. What is the secret to storytelling across those eras?
Again, a compelling message and something that resonates with the people. The problem with TikTok is that it's all things to all people. That's their news source, their entertainment source. It's everything. And just like Twitter, you can't convey a story in 150 characters. It takes a little bit of that. You can't do it with a single 30-second clip. You can start it. It can augment a message, but that is not the be all end all. TikTok is not going to make your product sell 9 or 10 million out the first year. It certainly won't hurt it any, and it's going to open people's eyes to it. But you have to have a product that meets the demand. It has to function or not, because there's silly things that catch on too. But you have to get people to believe that they need that. And when they believe it, then they become your brand ambassadors, and they ride with it, and they tell all their buddies they've got it. And now you do need it, because everybody within your circle believes that they need it. But it's just like any effort in fiction writing, it has to be a willing suspension of disbelief. We need to keep that willing suspension of disbelief that you need a motorcycle, and you need to be out there riding, and you need to enjoy our industry to its fullest, because you do. Even though the facts say, no, you don't. It's not really safer. It's not going to do any of the things that you'll tell yourself that it does. And it's going to be a $30,000 or $40,000 side-by-side. It's not even economical. There's no bang for the buck or ROI on an investment like that.
That's so expensive, I know. You're on the Motorcycle Industry Council board now. What are you most passionate about pushing forward for the future of riding, in your opinion?
That's, again, not telling the story properly. What MIC does is a pretty well-kept secret. And just before I got on, Eric Anderson had fought literally for 20 years during his time on the MIC board to get dealers to have a voice. And finally, we accepted dealers as members. We launched the bank card program. We did all these great things. We didn't promote it properly. And in recent years, our dealer advisory council stopped coming to MIC meetings at the request of a previous regime, because they were scaring the bejesus out of us. A dealer would come in and say these things that they saw with their own eyes. They weren't lying. It was the truth, but we couldn't handle the truth as an entity. Also, MIC has to balance the needs of that retailer with the max dues paying OEM members and the 300 plus aftermarket members that we have. Those are our dues paying constituents. We do need to service their needs. And we're not always going to be on the same page, even with AMA. Right to repair is an important issue to MIC's members.
Yep.
But we're in opposition with AMA on that. And at the end of the day, I ask our dealers, and it's like, it doesn't mean anything at the dealership level. A guy who's going to get his bike service is going to get his bike service. Them having access to the CAN bus codes and the specialty tools and all of those things that are tied up in right to repair doesn't mean as much to the dealer as it does to the rider groups in the AMA or to the MIC and the OEMs. So we have to agree to disagree. We have to fight those battles where we can and work with each other as best we can. And it's been a long time coming, because there were years and years. I've been on the Motorcycle Industry Council Aftermarket Committee since 91. And I can tell you that there are lots of times where they didn't even want to hear from the aftermarket, let alone hear from a dealer or hear from the AMA or all that. And we didn't, collectively as an entity, we didn't talk to AMA for 10 years. When Eric Kutcher, our previous president and CEO, came on board, he extended the olive branch. He called Rob Dingman at AMA and he said, "This is silly. We don't know why we don't talk to you guys, but let's start the dialogue again." And so finally, the two associations do speak to each other.
Good.
And even though Eric's gone and Christy's come in, she's continued that forward. So that gives me hope that we're going to get it right. It's just the wheels of inertia are hard to overcome. The things that we have done successfully, like getting the exemption during COVID, the upcoming PFAS issue, even though it's been pushed out of the headlines by the tariffs, that's going to impact not just power sports. That's a global thing, and it's going to be worse than asbestos. It's going to be worse than anything we've ever had hit all industries together because it's so pervasive. It's
Right.
in power sports. It's a deal breaker because everything, including the box that the unit shipped in, doesn't meet current PFAS standards. So Scott Schlegel and his team on the government relations side are fighting a huge battle, and they're doing everything they can to marshal the forces, and they need all the help they can get and then some, because if we don't fight this, it will be taken away from us. And there's not a cost-effective, efficient replacement for PFAS in some applications. And if we leave it to the government because they're here to help us, we're all going to lose.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Absolutely. Man, thinking about the PFAS is kind of, I didn't think about the ramifications in that side of the industry yet. That's hard to wrap your brain
Well,
around.
and look at the OEMs. They've got a 5 to 10 year planning cycle to bring a motorcycle to market. So they're already 5 years behind the 8 ball on the product because they built it and they expect to ship it with these product or with PFAS.
Right.
And everything that.
Yeah.
So at best we can get an exemption for product that's already in there, but eventually there has to be some sort of rational, feasible solution, or our industry is going to be the one that suffers more than anybody, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Really.
For sure.
Well, this question's for the younger riders out there, the younger generation that are looking to get into this space, whether as riders, mechanics, writers, whichever, avenue they choose. What would you tell a 25-year-old Robin today getting into this space?
Get a real job.
That's so funny. Everybody burned.
The reason I got into it was because I couldn't remember to upsell and say, "Would you like fries with that?" at the end of every conversation. Also because a passion for the product. But the first thing that I gave up, I get to go around the world and ride bikes, and that's awesome. But that's the only riding I have time to do now. I don't just have the ability to go out on a weekend and ride my motorcycle and not have it part of a photo shoot or tie into a story or it's a new model launch or whatever. If I had all the money in the world, yes, I would do what I do, but I would make time to go riding. And if you're really that passionate about riding, being in the industry is going to be the time suck. You'll be at all the events and all that great stuff, but you'll be the guy who's working the booth, not the guy who's out demoing the bike.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Robin, I wanted to ask you, since we were talking about the tariff question before, you just came back from China yourself. What was the business trip for, and what's new coming or not coming, that maybe we should prepare for? What are you seeing? Like you before we were on the air, you said you were surprised. Well, can you take us a little bit into what's going on there to the American audience here?
So I'll confess that I had the blinders on, and the godless Chinese were ruining our market and flooding us with low product or low value product and all of that. And then I had to check myself. It's like, that's the same thing that the Harley guys were saying when you met the nicest people on Honda. And it was Jap crap. All of a sudden, now Honda's got the reputation for the best fit and finish in the industry, the best value, bulletproof machines and all that. It's like, wait a minute, those were the guys that were the Jap crap? Well, the Chinese are in that same boat, and the product is not as bad as we make it out to be. Sure, it's built to a price point. It's done all of that because that's where the market is. They're not going to unseat Honda's place. They're not going to unseat Harley Davidson's place. They are going to have to come in under them or around them or create new categories or do something, because the big 7 or the big 8, if you want to count the UTV manufacturers, aren't going to give it to them. They're going to have to earn it, and they are. And I went into that. It's like, okay, it's the worst time in the world to be going to China, right? When we're in the middle of all this saber rattling. But it's also the best time. I can see now with my own eyes, forget my notions, what's really going on. And I will tell you that Shanghai is the cleanest, nicest city I've ever been in. 23 million people, and there is not one
Wow.
bit of graffiti in that town. There is no homeless, and maybe it's because the Chinese government doesn't allow that. But we were 5 hours outside of Shanghai in small communities, in factory towns, and that sort of thing. There's still no graffiti. Their standard of living has come up. They're an aspirational society. They're getting to the point where they will be wanting to get a scooter or some two-wheel transportation to replace the bicycle. They're in that growth phase. The people are optimistic. And I also thought, yeah, there's going to be pushback because they're going to hate Trump and they've got all of these. No, we went on behalf of Tao and Donago and a couple of the manufacturers. On the Donago team uniform, there's an American flag on the sleeve. And obviously we didn't fit in with the local crowds when we just went into any random place. And yet the people were nice.
Awesome.
It was clean, it was efficient. And then going to Tao is now the largest ATV and pit bike supplier into the US, right? It's as of
No kidding.
8 weeks ago.
Wow.
So they make everything. And I've been to factories all around the world, and it's like so engines come in, sub-assemblies, just-in-time manufacturing. It does go together. It is a factory. No, these guys have the wiring looms. They're making wiring looms on the site. They're making the frames 100% from the raw metal. They've got the stamping room, and they're stamping out the plastic components on this, not one giant press, but 25 giant presses. And
Jeez.
their volume is so huge and product line so diverse. There's ATVs and maybe UTV that I can't talk about, and the pit bikes, and now big motorcycles that I can't talk about. All of the Walmart and the Kmart and the big box stuff and the Amazon shipments that are going out there. They're filling all these channels, direct to consumer, whatever the market's demanding. They're agile and they have the capacity to fill that chain on the back end because they've been forced into that. How did they succeed? They go where the market is. And that's
That's right.
what a good dealer does. That's what a good OEM does. You go where the market is. What do your customers want? Give them that. That's it. Supply and demand. And
How big do you think that factory was?
I don't have an exact footprint yet.
In football fields?
20, 30. There's an entire wing of
Good
area
God.
where 5,000 people live. That's the factory housing. Those guys punch across and walk across these 20 football fields to get to their independent station, but they live there, they work there. That is what they do. And
That's
Crazy.
Crazy.
definitely the biggest
Robin,
factory I've
where-
ever seen.
That's I can't believe it. There's a big, it's like a 300,000 square foot Haas factory going in I think Nevada. And that's, mind blowing. But then just to imagine what's over there in China is pretty crazy to think about. But Robin, where can people, if they want to track along with you and Dealer News and anything else that you've got going on, where is the best place to send them?
DealerNews.com is the best place. That's the aggregate of our social channels and our twice weekly e-blast and all that. It shows up on the website, and then each month when an issue goes live, it's archived there on the website as well. So we've got all the social channels, LinkedIn, X, you name it. We do all of that. We update those probably on a daily basis. Twice a week we do the e-blast and update the website at least twice a week. And if there's breaking news, then it goes live as quick as I can get it up there. And then the culmination is the monthly magazine.
Gotcha.
And so as it's
Is there
been since
anything else, Bill?
1965, magazine's always been free of charge to the dealers. We're here as a service and a champion for the dealer. And so that's why I can't print a top 100 yearbook just yet, because I'm not going to go back to the dealers and charge them for something we've provided for free all these years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything else going on, on the horizon, or anything else exciting going on in your world that you want to talk about?
there's lots of things going on. AIM Expo moves from Vegas to Anaheim next year. That's going to be a big one.
Oh.
Going to be in conjunction with hopefully the A1 Supercross. And maybe that's the opportunity for that trade show to go back to its mission to become the EICMA of America and add a consumer component to a trade show and bring it all together. We tried a little bit with the one show in conjunction at Vegas this year. It didn't quite work out, and we didn't have enough advance warning leading into it. So this will be a big experiment. National Powersports Dealer Association that didn't exist 3 years ago is now closing in on 500 members, and it's got its own event, a networking event for dealers only. There is no consumer component, but Dealer Connect. If you're a dealer, September in Columbus, that's the place to be. And in the old days when Dealer Expo was launched, they tried it in Anaheim, they tried it in Texas, and half a dozen other places, and including Columbus. But we settled on Cincinnati and then later Indianapolis because 50% of the nation's dealers are in a 500-mile driving radius of those towns. Those towns
Really
have, same case for Chicago, but those towns don't have the union and the labor issues and the higher cost of doing business. So they're second-tier convention centers, just about the right size for it. And it was held in the dead of winter, so the dealers didn't lose anything by shutting down the shop, loading the shop truck up with everybody, and driving 500 miles to go to your trade show. Over the years, that golden triangle math got lost. The last Dealer Expo moved to Chicago. The costs were too much for the vendors to participate in, and then there was a blizzard, so it was because it moved to December instead of February. Dealers didn't make it, and that was the final nail in the coffin for Dealer Expo. So the hope is that Dealer Connect, being in that same golden area, will appeal to dealers who can drive in for it. Time of year is what it is because the association doesn't want to step on AIM's toes. We want to work together with everybody. I say we because I'm an advisor and I've helped since day one to get that off the ground because, again, just like our Top 100 contest, dealers need a voice. They need to support each other, and NPDA, the tool that makes that happen.
That's cool.
So that Dealer Connect is the one to watch. And because it's adjacent to the convention center there, it can grow. It can have 300. It could have 500. It could have 1,500 exhibitors. It could be Dealer Expo on steroids, just because, again, that's what the market is asking for. Give the dealers what they want. They want to return to that. And think back to those Dealer Expos, and no matter what we did on the show floor or how much we invested in education or all the bells and whistles that we pulled out, dealers did more business at the bar with their vendors and their peers than ever happened on that show floor. That's just a fact of life. But you have to give them that excuse to get there together and unify. And that's what MPDA is going to hopefully catch on to.
Your passion is infectious. I'm going to tell you that right now. The way you talk, and it's so awesome to hear because it's such a different perspective that we have not had on the show prior. So it's so educational. I mean, we keep you on here for about 5 hours, but obviously we'll have to do a second show, but we do still have the speed round. So buckle up, and here's the deal. If you don't make the 2 minutes, you send Ben and I autograph picture so we can hang it in our wall here for having you on. Is that cool?
That's cool. I might even be able to do that. So quick story before we get into the speed round.
Sure. Oh, sure.
I work with the greatest people in the world, and we call it the Bad Idea Club because bringing DealerNews back didn't make any sense to anybody except the Bad Idea Club. And I had PhDs on that were also dealers. I had Scott Harden, our advocacy editor, because he believed
such a good
message. Hector Catamatori, who did all the illustrations for Cycle World and Road and Track all those years, because he's just a genuinely nice human being, but he'd done covers for Dealer News back in the day. And as soon as he got wind of it, he didn't take no for an answer. He said, I'm going to do the column artwork, just like Cycle World did all those years before Cycle World stopped being a monthly magazine for each. So Hardin and I both have our department head. Bob's got one. Hector Cadamatori original illustration done just for Dealer News for all of us. So
Man,
if Hector gives
so
me
cool.
permission, I'll blow it up and I'll send you copies of that, because
That would be
Yeah.
amazing, man. Thank you so much. That would be so awesome. So awesome. Scott's we fell in love with Scott, man, after the interview. He's such a good man. All right, let's get it, Ben. 2 minutes on the clock. Put it up.
All right.
All right. Best bike you ever owned or ridden?
just like the best beer I ever had, if it's cold and it's free and in front of me, it's a good beer. If it's somebody else paying for the gas and the tires, then it's probably a good ride. And having that, I never bought a new motorcycle once I got into the industry because I got to ride them all. So in my garage right now is my 69 steel tank Penton, my Royal Enfield Cafe Racer from
Nice.
90,
Sweet.
my wife's SV650, a TA 125 race
Nice.
bike. It's the most eclectic collection in the world. But out of all of them, my old Penton, definitely because of the On Any Sunday connection, and it was the first real motorcycle, is probably the one.
So awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing that. Most underrated motorcycle of the last 30 years, in your opinion?
Not just because it's celebrating its anniversary, but the Goldwing, just that captured a lifestyle. That did everything that Harley was doing, but it did it for the Japanese brands and made them credible and made them number one within a niche. I will also say that definitely underrated and underappreciated was the Can-Am Spyder. And everybody jokes it's on a motorcycle, it's an autocycle, whatever you want to call it. It quietly did 100,000 units in its first 10 years. And now there's Spyder clubs that ride to Sturgis and all of that. And maybe it's sacrilege to somebody, but it's creating a niche and making it happen and succeeding where everybody said, no, it can't do it. So,
Man, they're doing some crazy add-ons to them too, man. I've seen a couple that these guys, they just mapped them out. They look insane.
yeah. And that's the great thing. It's a canvas for you to make it yours. It's not just a
Right.
mass-produced machine.
Right. Good point. All right. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
I would like to have dinner with my old friend Don Brown once again. We worked together right up and literally until the day he died. It was really
Man.
tragic. And every time that we got together in all of those years, it was like the first time. There was stories that he knew about the old days and things that I had no clue about, that I just
Man, that's
one more
special.
chance to pick his brain on what's going on.
Yeah, that's cool.
Wow.
All right, we're going back into your college days here. Top 3 favorite beers of all time.
Well, got to be Newcastle Brown, just because that was my entry into the whole field.
Great beer, by the way.
It was. I
Mhm.
used to San Miguel Dark was my beer in college, but then when Newcastle Brown showed up, it got replaced. I haven't had a San Miguel Dark in 40 years, but I had plenty of
Wow.
Newcastles over the time. When I was there at the beer magazine, we had a pivotal shift from the microbrew and home brewing industry to the craft brewing industry, and it was huge. And the second story I did for the magazine was a place called Millstream Brewing in the Amana colonies in Iowa. So now it's 50 years later. I've gotten married, and my wife is from Iowa, and the Millstream Brewery is still there, and it's 15 minutes from our front door in Iowa to the brewery.
No way.
So
That's so
Wow.
cool.
anything that they've got is going to be one of my favorites because, again, it resonates with me, and it's a good beer.
Hey,
Nice.
off the cusp here on this question, you travel a lot. Where do you feel, who's got, I mean, because the microbreweries are insane right now. I know we live in Florida. We've got some incredible local breweries here with great IPAs. From your travels, where have you found some of the best breweries?
Got to be Germany. There's nothing like being in Oktoberfest and they tap that first keg at noon, and the first liter is delivered to you straight from the keg, same as it's been since the 1700s. That's pretty tough to overcome. Plus, that each one of those breweries has been around all that time, so
yeah,
it's really cool to go into those buildings and see that history as well as the product. And it's gonna be good product because it's still around.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Your playlist is stuck on one band. Who are you praying it is?
Oof. Well, unlike just about everybody in the music industry or in the power sports industry, I'm not married to any particular style or type of music. I took piano lessons when I was a little kid, and that's when I also confirmed that I needed to ride motorcycles, not play musical instruments. So my playlist is probably going to be, again, what triggers memories. And it could be something as bizarre as Devo or Oingo Boingo. If I got to listen to it over and over again.
So yeah, new wave guy then.
Yeah. Or the On Any Sunday music. That plays in my head when I'm out in the desert riding. I hear that.
Okay, cool. That's great. Man. What's the biggest myth about the motorcycle industry most people aren't aware of?
I see all of the clickbait things and hear the hate from the ignorant masses that it's dealerships and they're out there just to take your money and drive up these sales and tack on and add on, and it's like, no, get to know these people. They've been driving that community, and they're the biggest soft touches there is. Every little league team is sponsored by a motorcycle store and all these things. We reach so far beyond it. We're not the evil dealership. We are the pillar of your community, whether you want to admit it or not.
Cool. Great answer. Great answer. One motorcycle brand that has seriously leveled up over the years.
Motorcycle brand. So that takes out the side-by-sides and what?
Yeah. Just strictly like from your experience with being, seeing all these new motorcycle models coming out, things like that. Who do you think's like improved over the years? Really has taken it to the next level?
Probably from my time, had to be Ducati. Again, the great Don Brown engineered a specific group, saving Ducati from bankruptcy. And I mean, they were just like Harley was on death's door after the AMF era. That was Ducati all over again, and then some. And for them as a company to be where they are now is truly amazing. And the product is phenomenal. It's doing everything the right way. And they're not doing it selling scooters or side-by-sides or anything. They're a performance motorcycle. They're Ducati. So
no doubt.
They haven't lost in
Sure.
their identity. They opened it up with the Scrambler series to make it an aspirational thing. But when it comes to the end of the day, if you're a MotoGP guy or whatever, you are Ducatisti. You have to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. One bucket list trip you still want to do?
This, and all the travel I've done, this trip to China is the first time that I've been on the mainland. I've been to Hong Kong and I've been to Taiwan countless times, but I would go back there just to see that. For a riding trip, I was just thinking about that this morning. I still want to do Dakar. Maybe I'm not good enough or have the training to do the Malle Moto like those poor saps do, but I'll dream big.
We lived through that with when Scott was telling the story about Dakar. So that was cool, man. Yeah, that's insane for sure. All right, print or digital? What gets your creative juices going more these days?
Print. I'll always be a print dinosaur. And I look at a screen all day. I can't tell you what I did on the screen yesterday, but I can tell you those first issues of VW Trends. I have a photographic memory. I can see it. And if I can change the focus, I can read the headlines and almost read the captions for the first 12 or 15 issues that I did of the magazine.
That's
And
incredible.
that's what you get, that tactile experience in holding a magazine. Just like when I was in high school with my buddy and free reading and those issues of Dirt Bike. I can still remember that. I retain that information versus what I see on a screen. It's gone. And that's the
That's
experience
amazing.
that kids lose to this day. The technology, this is awesome. It is better than Star Trek because everything that you could ever need is there, but it's not, you can't retain it versus an experience in a magazine and what magazines did. And the death of motorcycle magazines on the newsstand and the rise of the internet simultaneously, I think are bad for people like me. It's the world. That's why Dealer News is digital. I'm the world's biggest hypocrite. I'm a digital dinosaur or a print dinosaur, but I have to live in this digital world. And I have to understand that's where people are getting their news and information.
I enjoy it too. I used to love when Cycle World or American Iron or, these magazines would come in, you wait for it all month and then it comes in, and to open it up and to read the articles, it's just not the same flavor for me when I'm doing it online, because I'm scrolling through and then you're absolutely right what you said. You don't retain it as much.
And
All right.
just that,
What's
the
go ahead,
the way of the magazine and seeing a color spread, it means something to just visceral. You connect and you retain and you feel it because you're involving more than one sense, and that's probably flat screen. It's audio and it's visual, but it doesn't engage the other senses.
Yeah, correct. True. All right, let's go to the next. What's the most underrated piece of gear riders tend to overlook?
Goes all the way back to bell helmets. You got a $10 head, get a $10 helmet.
That's good. I like that.
And I feel it naked. I always rode dirt and then got into everything else. But if I don't have my helmet on, there's something wrong. And it impacts my riding because that's playing in my head versus if I'm snugged into a good helmet, now I focus on the rest of the ride.
That's right. That's a good point. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received that you still implement today?
Of the dealer, by the dealer, and for the dealer. That's our mantra. That's my mission. And it's like the old hot dog commercial. We have to answer to a higher authority, and that the dealer is the higher authority in this case.
All right, very cool. For your world travels, which country has the best food?
Italy, hands down. I've been to EICMA and Milan 30 times, and every time is better. And there's my favorite pizzeria that I have to go to. And there's people now that have been on that same number of press junkets or there for the trade show. It's on their list too. And it's like, well, I know that I'll see them at Sabatini that first day because that's what we do.
Yep.
That's
all right. That's cool. Yep. All right. Finish this sentence. When I'm riding, I'm
happy.
Nice. All right. Last one. 3 words to describe the motorcycle industry right now.
Opportunity, commitment, and chaos.
Great answer. Great answer.
Yep.
All right, man.
You
made it through the speed round. So obviously we went 2 minutes and 1 second. So we still get that signed, the signed photo for us. So we're stoked. We dragged this on purpose, of course. But hey, in all sincerity, man, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. This has been, we've done, I think, close to 100 podcasts. I've had incredible people on, but this has just been one that I told you the first time we spoke, I was just excited to understand what goes on behind the scenes. Those are things that, as an enthusiast, we really don't get a chance to see, to really understand what's going on. And for you to just, in a little bit over an hour, to be able to kind of give us, a scope, we can definitely spend 5 hours talking about this stuff every day, but we truly appreciate them. And Robin, it's been so awesome having you on. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, my pleasure. Next time we do it, we'll tag team. Scott Harden and I can talk about some crazy stories.
Oh my
That'd be
God, are you kidding me? That would be incredible. Can you talk to Scott?
I
And
talk
ask
to
him
him
if
he'll
do
probably
it?
2-3 times a month. So yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Oh, that would be
Let's do it.
insane. Oh man, we're
That could
gonna
be
be.
our 100th episode.
I know, do it as our 100th episode. That's true. That'd be so sweet. All right. Well,
Yeah,
Robin,
heck
thank you so much.
Thanks,
Keep up the
Robert.
amazing work, man. Keep fighting for the dealers, and hopefully, smoother things come down the pike for them all, and this industry continues to thrive, and we get new blood coming into this industry, not only just from the consumer side, but also more kids enrolling in schools, technical schools, learning the trade, and helping grow this industry forward. So thanks for your time, and have a blessed rest of your week.
Well, thanks for having me. We'll do it again for sure.
Thanks for coming.
All right, that's
Yes,
cool, man. I'm stoked.
Can't wait. Thanks,
Have a-
Robin. Take care.
Robin and Scott on the same episode. Be sick.
All right. Take care.